That long, quiet pause. That person carrying feelings for you without ever fully saying them. The one who never speaks the words directly, yet their emotions are growing harder and harder to conceal. They care about you deeply, but they remain silent. And this is the part nobody really explains. Silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes silence is the loudest presence in the entire room. Sometimes it sounds like someone struggling to hold back an emotional storm. You've seen it, haven't you? Be honest with yourself. You've noticed it. The way their eyes stay on you just a little too long. The way they immediately look away when you catch them looking. The way their tone softens whenever they speak to you. Not because they are weak or unsure, but because they're frightened by what might slip out if they stop controlling themselves. You've sensed it underneath every conversation, every message, every accidental touch of hands, like there's this vibration under the surface, a frequency you can't completely explain, but you know it exists. And maybe you've convinced yourself you're imagining all of it, right? Maybe that small voice in your head keeps whispering that if someone truly felt this strongly, they would just say it. They would act differently. They wouldn't keep staying quiet. But this is what's difficult for many people to understand. Human beings don't always express what they feel. In fact, the strongest emotions are often the ones hidden most carefully. Not because they are meaningless, but because they matter so much that speaking them aloud feels terrifying, like stepping into the unknown without knowing what waits below. Imagine this for a moment. Picture a very specific memory. Maybe it's a quiet Tuesday evening. Maybe the two of you are sitting in a parked car after coffee, standing together in a kitchen, or walking slowly down a peaceful street. The conversation fades into one of those comfortable pauses where nobody needs to fill the silence. And during that pause, you catch them looking at you. Not staring aggressively, just observing you like they are trying to memorize every detail, like they are searching for a safe way to express something that doesn't have safe wording. Then suddenly they pull themselves back. They clear their throat, look away, and ask something ordinary about your job, the weather, or anything unrelated to what just passed between you. And you felt it, didn't you? That tiny fracture in the emotional wall they built around themselves. That brief instant where they almost opened the door completely, then closed it again so quickly you questioned whether it even happened. But it did happen. You didn't imagine any of it. That right there is often how silent love reveals itself. They are not trying to manipulate you. They are not attempting to appear mysterious. They are sincerely afraid. Afraid of rejection? Yes. But also afraid of what could happen if you respond with the same feelings. Because once the silence breaks, everything changes. And change, even beautiful change, can feel overwhelming when someone has spent years building emotional walls that made them feel safe. Here's something many people misunderstand about quiet love. Maybe you already know this deep down. Some people assume real love must always be loud and obvious. They expect dramatic gestures and constant declarations, but genuine, deep, soul-level affection often behaves differently. It doesn't perform for attention. It doesn't need an audience watching it. It exists quietly in the background, in the way they remember tiny details you mentioned months ago, in the way they consistently show up for you, not out of obligation, but because they choose to, in the way they listen more carefully than anyone else, as though they aren't only hearing your words, but hearing the person beneath them. And that is exactly why their feelings are becoming impossible to hide. Because love like this never stays small forever. It expands over time. It begins slipping through every crack they tried to seal. Think of it like a guiding light, my beautiful soul. Like the North Star sailors once relied on to cross endless oceans. Nobody needs the North Star to shout. It simply exists quietly in the night sky, steady and dependable. Yet it becomes one of the most important points of direction in the darkness. That's what this person is slowly becoming for you. a quiet source of emotional direction, something your heart keeps returning to, even when your mind insists there is nothing there. Without even realizing it, you navigate emotionally around them. Your choices, your thoughts, even your small decisions somehow include them beneath the surface. That is the quiet power of someone who doesn't need words to leave an impact. Their actions and presence speak loudly enough already. You've probably started noticing the signs more clearly lately. The way they suddenly seem nervous around you when they used to act completely relaxed. The way they trip over words that once came naturally. The way they invent reasons to be close to you, then pretend it means nothing. I was just nearby. I thought you'd enjoy this. I happened to think of you. The excuses become thinner while the emotional tension becomes stronger. And here is the painful part. They are frustrated with themselves for not being able to say what they feel openly. At night, they replay conversations repeatedly, wondering what they should have said differently. They imagine confessing their feelings. They imagine you returning those feelings. Then immediately they imagine the worst outcome possible, losing you completely, or damaging the connection forever. That fear shuts everything down again. So they continue staying silent, not because they don't care, but because they care so deeply that risking the connection feels unbearable. But something is changing now. You can feel it, can't you? I think you can. The silence no longer feels calm or comfortable. It feels tight now, charged somehow. Every unspoken emotion hangs between you like a held breath waiting to be released. When you walk into the same room, the atmosphere changes instantly. Eye contact suddenly carries meaning neither of you can fully explain. It isn't fantasy. It isn't wishful thinking. It's emotional pressure building over time. Think about boiling water. Right before it begins bubbling, there's that strange moment where everything becomes still. The surface smooths out completely. The sound changes. That's exactly where this connection exists right now, right before the visible shift. This person, the one loving you quietly, is slowly running out of places to hide emotionally. Their body language reveals what their mouth refuses to say. Their eyes linger slightly longer than before. Their hands tremble a little when they hand you something. Their voice softens into a tone they only seem to use around you. The emotional mask is slipping, and you are not blind to it. You've noticed. Maybe you've even started gently testing the connection yourself, holding eye contact longer to see who looks away first, sharing something vulnerable to see whether they respond honestly. You aren't doing this to manipulate them. You're doing it because you need clarity. You need to know whether this feeling is truly mutual or whether you are simply attaching meaning to kindness. But listen carefully. You are not inventing this connection. That feeling in your chest isn't paranoia. It's recognition. You are recognizing a heart attempting to love you from a safe distance because it still doesn't know how to love you openly yet. And honestly, that's the hardest part, isn't it? Waiting, wondering, feeling this enormous unspoken connection growing larger inside your life while neither of you fully addresses it. Unable to completely confront it because nothing explicit has been said, yet unable to let it go because emotionally it refuses to release you. Let me tell you something difficult but important. They probably won't suddenly wake up one morning and effortlessly say everything. Not unless something changes emotionally between you. The same fear that kept them silent until now can continue keeping them silent forever, unless the emotional pattern shifts. And that shift usually doesn't come from pressure, confrontation, or demands. It comes from emotional safety. People reveal their truth when they feel safe enough to survive whatever answer follows. So the better question isn't, why won't they just say it? The real question becomes, what would help them feel safe enough to? Maybe it's you allowing yourself to soften in moments where you normally stay guarded. Maybe it's you sharing vulnerability first, not as a strategy, but as something honest and sincere. Maybe it's simply acknowledging the unspoken tension gently by saying something like, I feel like there's something unspoken between us, and I don't need perfect words. I just want you to know I'm not running away from honesty. That kind of openness can feel terrifying too. Of course it can, because it places your own emotions at risk. It leaves space for rejection or discomfort. But here's something important I've learned. Silence itself can slowly become its own kind of heartbreak. It slowly erodes possibilities that might have become meaningful and real. Eventually, you reach a moment where you must decide whether risking vulnerability is better than remaining emotionally frozen forever. This person, the one carrying silent love for you, is not trying to harm you emotionally. They are not intentionally playing difficult games. They are genuinely trapped inside themselves. Maybe they built their entire identity around being dependable, controlled, emotionally steady, and loving you deeply threatens that structure emotionally. Not because you are difficult, but because what they feel no longer fits neatly into the life they carefully organized. Maybe they are already involved in another relationship that lacks emotional fulfillment. Maybe they worry about family opinions or past emotional wounds. Maybe they were hurt deeply before and promised themselves they would never become vulnerable again. Whatever the reason, their fear feels real to them, and that fear becomes a cage. But cages eventually become unbearable when something inside finally wakes up, and you awakened something inside them. The way you truly see them, not just the image they present publicly, but the real person underneath, became deeply meaningful to them. That feeling is powerful. It's the exact emotional connection they may not have realized they were missing for years. And now that they've experienced it, silence no longer feels protective. It feels suffocating. You've probably already noticed the emotional inconsistency too. Some days they feel warm, open, emotionally close. Other days they pull back, become distant, overly formal, emotionally cautious again. That doesn't mean they are confused about you. It means there is an internal battle happening inside them constantly. One part of them wants to move toward you completely, while another part fears what will happen if they actually arrive there emotionally. And here's the thing about inner conflict. Eventually, one side begins winning. The emotional pressure continues building. The silence becomes heavier and harder to carry. Then one day, maybe unexpectedly, something finally shifts. Maybe it happens quietly through a late-night text saying something simple but emotionally loaded. Maybe the truth slips out hidden inside a joke. Maybe one evening you're both laughing together, and suddenly the laughter fades, and they look at you differently than before. That moment becomes the crack in the emotional wall. That's the beginning. Or maybe one day they finally speak honestly, awkwardly, imperfectly, nothing like dramatic movie scenes. And speaking of films, there's a moment in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind that captures this feeling beautifully. Joel and Clementine stand inside a bookstore. He's quiet, shy, emotionally trapped inside his own thoughts. She's expressive, impulsive, emotionally open, and he doesn't suddenly make some huge romantic speech. He simply stays close. He listens carefully. He watches her exist authentically, and you can feel his emotions becoming impossible to hide. Not because he says something dramatic, but because even his silence begins trembling emotionally. That's the moment that matters most. The instant before confession, when the love already exists fully but still hasn't found a doorway into words yet. That's exactly where this person is standing with you right now, my beautiful soul. Emotionally frozen between silence and honesty, trying to act normal while every part of them quietly moves toward you. The real question is no longer whether they care about you. They do. The deeper question becomes what happens after the silence finally ends. Because here's something people rarely discuss. Saying the words is only the beginning. After honesty comes the real emotional work. Can both of you handle the vulnerability that follows? Can you move through the awkwardness together? Can you build something healthy from all the tension and silence that existed before? Or maybe, and this possibility hurts, maybe the silence existed because they still aren't emotionally ready to love someone in the way you deserve. Maybe they need healing inside their own life first, before they can truly show up for another person completely. And maybe your purpose isn't to wait endlessly. Maybe your responsibility is simply seeing the truth clearly, understanding that someone can genuinely care about you deeply while still being emotionally unable to love you well. That doesn't make their feelings false. It simply means their love is unfinished. So what do you do with all these emotions now? You allow yourself to feel them without obsessively trying to solve everything. You stop analyzing every interaction, searching for hidden evidence. You stop waking up each day wondering whether today will finally become the day they speak openly. Because this is the truth that gives you peace. Their silence is not your responsibility. Their fear is not yours to carry. You are allowed to honor your feelings without turning it into your mission to force honesty from someone who still isn't ready to speak fully. And meanwhile, you continue living your own life. You do not pause your entire world waiting for someone else to find courage. You don't reject every other meaningful connection. You remain emotionally open without remaining emotionally trapped. Because whether they ever confess openly or not, their silent love has already shown you something valuable. It reminded you how deeply human connection can be felt, even without dramatic declarations. It taught you that real affection often exists quietly inside small moments, lingering glances, thoughtful gestures, and the tiny things people do when they believe nobody notices. And maybe most importantly, it reminded you that you are deeply memorable. You are not easy to forget. You are the person someone stays awake thinking about long after the conversation ends. You became their guiding light, my beloved soul, the emotional direction they keep returning toward, even while they are too afraid to say your name out loud. That is not meaningless. That is powerful. So breathe deeply. Feel your emotions honestly, but do not allow silence to define your entire worth. Let it teach you instead. Let it remind you that your sensitivity allows you to recognize when something authentic is unfolding emotionally. That sensitivity is a gift, not a weakness. And if someday they finally speak honestly, you'll know what to do naturally. Not because you prepared every outcome, but because you already felt the truth long before the words arrived. Trust yourself in that moment. Truly trust yourself. Because the person loving you silently is reaching a point where those emotions are becoming impossible to contain forever. That isn't merely a possibility anymore. It's only a matter of time. And when the silence finally ends, you deserve to be standing firmly inside your own truth instead of buried beneath years of waiting. You've made it this far already. You are stronger than you think. Take care of your heart.